Hello world, I'm Code Eric, and I'm back with another installment of what is going on the Zerve product. As you know, I've been working on this app called Zerve, and today I want to give a really quick intro to what it's like when the app is half built, because that's where we're at right now. This is going to be a really short video. I just want to show you all of the nooks and crannies of this app that I haven't managed to demo so far because they're broken and they're half built, and they might even be deleted before the app goes live to the store or anything like that. So let's just have some fun taking a look at the app. Let's start maybe from the bottom of the app so we can see all these things that I don't usually show off. For example, in the app settings, there's a few features that I think might actually stay here, but a lot of this stuff is basically just here for development. At the bottom, you can see this is information regarding Expo and our ability to auto-update the app. So Expo has an update service that allows us to push new code without having to go through the App Store. And because I'm not on Expo's Pro plan and it's not fully rolled out yet, I don't actually get to enjoy that feature yet. So right now, this always fails on my phone when I try to update the app. But that's not a big deal. Eventually, Expo is going to have that feature rolled out. And it's a really great way to update the React Native code without having to update all of the native code in the app. This manifest basically opens some JSON. There's like an arbitrary JSON viewer functionality in the app, and I'll show you that in some other places. These clearing local history and data, I don't know if they're actually wired up. Okay, here's an example of some broken stuff. This is an async button, and when I was building the async button, I literally just put a spinner in here without caring about how it was formatted. So this is not good. Also, you can see that there was a notification that popped up. That's a toast. And I wrote a little bit of custom toast code for this library, but probably will want to replace it with a more mature user interface library. The kitchen sink has all sorts of good stuff. The kitchen sink kind of has our examples for things that I'm working on and little features that I'm about to add. So UI examples, these are like things where I was adding features to the UI and I just wanted to have a few places where I could just look at and ironically, even though this is the UI example, it's really ugly. But this is a button, and this is the toast that I was talking about. So when you click on this toast button, it shows the toast. And like I said, I built this toast library myself, so it's not perfectly dialed in. It stays too long. This is an error toast. You can see it shows up in red. But look, when I swipe back, the toast container is on both screens. This is something I really want to get fixed, but it's a difficulty I'm having with the modal presentation of this screen with React Native, because usually in React Native, I would just render something over the entire screen, but now the entire screen is back here. So if I want to render a toast above everything, I haven't really figured out how to do that right now, so I'm rendering the toast little system inside of every container, inside of every screen. So that's why when I open like two different toasts, they're on this screen, but then they're also on this screen. And if we swipe back, they're also on the home screen. So like I said, this is an app that's half built. It's really bad right now. But that's what it's like so far. And this is what it's like when we're really building a real application. There's all sorts of little bits of demo functionality and half-built functionality that will often get removed or turned off before it really makes it to the users. And it's really just useful while the app is getting. So I'll show you the JSON editor. This is a good section where basically all sorts of places in the app you're able to edit JSON according to a JSON schema. So I've been working on a generic JSON editor that also allows you to specify a schema, and that schema informs how that JSON editor presents itself. So there's read-only. So this is like when we're presenting a piece of data that's just read-only format. This doesn't look very good. This is still super ugly. But here we're rendering like a list of strings. We're rendering a Boolean and a number. And this is what it looks like when you render null. It just says empty. And also on these things, there's a little popover, a little drop down, but it's showing up at the bottom of the screen, but you can't really see it. Okay, so here on a list, for example, it says delete. You shouldn't be able to delete an item on a list that you're not able to change, but I'll show you here on the writable JSON schema. There's all these different things, for example, and I know this is really ugly, but this is just kind of useful during the development. So here, for example, this is a list of strings, and this is actually set up as a different screen. So when you tap on this, it pops into a different screen. You're able to edit the list. And because we're actually able to, this is a writable JSON schema. When I make a change, the change is reflected. So here you can see that little string that I added to the list here. Here is a JSON editor with any schema. So basically the schema functionality is turned off here. And here you're able to specify what you want. You could say, hey, I'm editing a number, and then this has to be a number. But you could change, hey, this is actually an object. Whoops. So in an object, you can have your own properties, and each property can have their own type, right? So you can have some text, and you can also have a number inside of an object. And see, we basically have a fully functional JSON editor here. It's mostly working. The union schema editor is basically, in JSON schema, when you have one of, it basically says, oh, it could be one of several different schemas. And this is a very powerful and important capability. So here I was experimenting with that in my JSON schema editor, where you're basically able to edit, say, oh, maybe you're literally just false, or maybe it's an object, and that object has a name on it, but it also has a certain part of the object that's hard-coded in order to distinguish between other schema options in this union. So this is a little bit of a detail that you don't need to worry about, but having these union schemas and having this really powerful JSON editor has been a really big part of this project. And here's just the part of the app where we're experimenting with it. We're in the kitchen sink area. One thing that the JSON editor does not do, though, is it doesn't allow you to rearrange things, because that's kind of a difficult thing to do on a mobile UI. So here's what we're doing for that. I'm working on it. I found a library that allows you to sort inside of React Native. It's a drag and drop sort. So here, even though I'm able to scroll through this list, I'm also able to long press on one of these things, and now I'm dragging it. And it's really nice that I can even scroll while dragging. So if I want to move this thing to the very bottom of the list, I can do that. So this, I'll go more into this when I wind up integrating this into the JSON editor, but I found it really handy to put this sorting test inside of the kitchen sink of the application, because I wanted to test how it felt on a device, on both iOS and Android, and I've done that. I tested this sort example on both platforms, and it's really slick. There's occasional glitches, especially on Android. It's good enough for me to use, I think, considering how difficult of a problem it is. It's really smooth because it uses Reanimated 2 and React Native Gesture Handler. So all of that movement, when you move your finger and see the movement behind it, that's handled entirely 60 frames per second, which is so great to have in a React Native. And the last thing that I haven't really talked about here is the ability for the app to record its own history. And I've added some capabilities for that inside of the kitchen sink. This is really ugly. So history events is literally just JSON in here. But I can press this button and a history event happens on the application. And I can press this other button and it basically makes 3 events at once. This is done. It's saved in a very performant way. Behind the scenes, it's using React Native MMKV, which is a local storage solution that's really fast and provides synchronous storage. So basically, let's move on to the next section beyond the app settings, and that's the local history. That's where these events are going to be visible inside of the app. So here we can see those 4 events that we just made. 3 of them we made at once, and 1 we made just by hand by tapping the test event. And it's really ugly and simple right now. This event screen is also what you see after an action happens through the API. It will basically create an event recording the results of the action, saying, this is what the input was, this is the action, this is the time you did it, and this is the result. And it takes you to this event screen so you can see what happened, what did you do on the server, but then it also adds it to this local event history. So here inside of the server setup, for example, our dev server is running on our laptop here, and the dynamic API is something I've talked about in the other videos, but this is basically a generic server, and the client is querying for all of the different capabilities of the server, and it's able to see that it has an admin section, it's able to see that it has a store, and the store has some state, and the state also has, or the store also has a dispatcher, which is an action that you can take. And here, this is one of those union type schemas where we're kind of deciding which of the different types are you going to be sending to the server. In this case, you could say, I want to write a schema value. You could write a single value. you don't have to worry about this. This is stuff that the users won't have to know about. It's very much behind the scenes, but it's fun to tinker with. So here, for example, we're editing a object, and we're saying that we're going to be sending a value. It's the write value action. So here we could say the home banner, and I happen to know that home banner is a text, so I'm going to set it to a string. So I'm going to say changed. Now I'm going to submit this action, and our server comes back and it says that basically, yes, it has successfully committed this action on our store. So we should be able to actually go see, even though we were doing this through the low-level API inside of the Z API inside of the server, we should see that home banner has updated. So it has changed now as a response to us doing that. And this is the part of the app that you may have already seen if you have seen the previous videos. We can change the schema of what this thing is. Right now it's a text, but we can change it to be something else. We can change it to be, for example, a list. Let's go back into this other example and this other file. You can see this switch list, where it's basically set up to be an array of switches, an array of booleans. So we can turn them all on. We can turn them all on and hit save. If we want, we can delete one of these items because maybe there's too many, and we'll save that as well. And then we can come in and see what the schema looks like. In this case, it's set up to be a list schema, where the child of this list is, they're all going to be booleans. And here we can even put a description of like, is this item, and maybe we can say that the default value is true because it defaults to being on. So I don't know, this is just a silly example. Sadly enough, as the schema changes, it will wipe out the file. So that's a huge issue. We need to make sure the schema is able to validate the existing data and convert the existing data if it meets the new schema. But here, look, the default for these new items is on, and we can see that the description is flowing through here on this schema. So that's a slight example of what it's like to use a more complicated schema on your files inside of a server. And there's a few other things here. Event history actually is empty right now, and it doesn't work yet, but on the back end, a lot of this is already working. So you'll notice that it's actually called chain history here, which is a little bit of a clue, because a little secret that I haven't talked about yet on this channel is that these files are saved in a blockchain. Now, I'm not sure that's the best way to do things, but what that does mean is if you go make a change, it will be easy to see who made the change, what change happened, and it'll be easy to revert it. So all of these things are saved as the actual actions that are going to the server. So if I come in here to our example switch list where we just were, I can come in here and delete it, and it's gone, right? But it's not actually gone. All we did is we sent a delete action to the server, and the server added that to the blockchain. And of course, here we're looking at the result of the latest blockchain. So even though the event history is showing an empty chain history right now, eventually this is actually going to be the blockchain history, and this will show all of the actions that have happened to the files here in your server. And we're getting pretty far along. The schemas I'm actually not going to show you. This is what I've been working on most recently. If you've been paying attention so far in this video and on the other videos, I'll bet you can guess exactly what this is. This is going to be a very powerful functionality, but we're not talking about it just now. What we should talk about is we should talk about how there's this little local projects section of the app. And this is one of those things that I was prototyping on very early, before the app was even connected to the Zed server. So here there's a new file button, there's an add files button. Watch this, I love this. This add files button reaches into Expo's file media API and basically asks iOS to give us some files, give us some photos. But we don't actually have that working yet. This was just sort of example code. These are some of the very first buttons that existed. And we do have some local storage capabilities. So here's a file that I'm creating locally. I don't think this works very well. It's highly incomplete. Okay, I created a file called B, and it's not even showing up here. So we've gone and broken this really badly. The local projects are not working, but eventually what we want to have is we want to have local blockchains and local files on your device without necessarily going to a server at all. So that's the intention here, is that here on the home screen of the application, you're going to have one section here for each server that you're connected to, and one section for your phone itself, where you're basically just managing what is in the Zerve app on your phone. And then you have all this other stuff down here what's the history of things that I've been doing in this application. We've showed you that earlier. And what are the app settings, which is this big old section of all sorts of stuff that's kind of coming soon and is kind of in development. In another video, I do show that there is the ability to come in to the server connections here inside of the settings, add a new server, and that basically will cause a new section to show up on the home screen. And you can go into there and save files on that other server and interact with the API that's on that other server. So I hope you've had fun taking a quick look at an application that's very much incomplete. A lot of this stuff will go away before I wind up launching this to the App Store, and a lot of this stuff will hopefully be looking a lot better and a lot more polished. Thanks for enjoying this content. I hope you had fun. Send me feedback on my development process. Like, was it a good idea to build these things first? And what would you have done differently? And let me know if you want to participate on this project, because it's a big one, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'd love to get you on board. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.